2 years, and my role is really to help students that are pharmacy interested and maybe exploring if pharmacy is the right fit for them, as well as helping students apply to pharmacy school once it's that time. So if you have questions about advising or if pharmacy is the right career path for you, I'm always happy to help. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Next, we have the representative from the College of Medicine.
Hi, I'm Kathy Mullenbreck. I'm the Director of Admissions for the Carver College of Medicine for the medical school program. So I can help with questions about applications, and we also talk with applicants who weren't admitted and help them get their applications in line to reapply. I have an assistant director and 2 admissions counselors, as well as 2 other people who help coordinate the program. So any of us will be happy to help you through whatever application process or tour or whatever you'd like to set up.
Thank you. Next, we have the representative from the College of Dentistry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Coble. I'm the Director of Dental Student Admissions at the College of Dentistry. I'm not a dentist by trade. I hope that's okay. But I have been in the College of Dentistry. I'm starting my 6th year, and my role there is to facilitate the admissions process, but also to figuratively hold your hand throughout the application process, to answer questions, to be your biggest cheerleader, and to hopefully offer some savvy tips along the line for how you can be successful in the process. And like Kathy mentioned, and I think all of us do this, happy to chat with people if they're not admitted the first time around and provide some counseling and some strategizing moving forward. So I'm really glad to be here and humbled. Thank you for having me.
And we're happy to have you as well. Thank you, Rachel. And then lastly, we have the representative from the PA school.
Hello, everyone. My name is Geraldine Westerkamp, and I'm actually here on behalf of a colleague, Dr. Thomas O'Shea, who is our Director of Admissions. I actually serve as the Coordinator of Clinical Outreach and Development, but we're a little unique because we are a pretty small department. There's only 4 staff members and then 6 faculty. So really, I help with a ton of admissions activities like recruitment fairs and the actual interview weekends. And I'm really happy to be here tonight and hopefully help share some information about the path if you want to become a physician assistant or a PA. So thanks again for the invite and looking forward to it.
Thank you, Geraldine. So our first question is, we have a lot of freshmen that have joined MAPS this year. And I wanted, the question is, what are some of the requirements to apply to your respective grad school? For example, like GPA or like standardized exams that you have to take?
Yeah, I believe pharmacy's first. So as far as pharmacy, we are one of the unique health professions because we are one of the few programs that does not require a bachelor's degree. So for our program, we only have 2 years worth of prerequisite requirements, but recognizing that that's the 2+4 path of pharmacy is just one way to begin and enter into the College of Pharmacy. Sometimes students will take 3 years to complete those prerequisites or the full 4 to complete a bachelor's degree. Some will go on into a completely different field of work before they come into pharmacy. So those 2 years of prerequisites are the most important thing to start with. We do require a minimum of a C- grade or above in those prerequisite coursework, as well as a 2.5 GPA. Beyond the grades and the courses that we require, we do encourage students to take the PCAT or the Pharmacy College Admission Test. This cycle, the PCAT is optional, but that is for this cycle only. We will revisit that for future cycles. So please make sure to check back in with me if you're not applying for next fall. In addition to the PCAT, we do require that students have a minimum of 2 letters of recommendation. So the biggest piece of advice that I can give to a first-year student is to start building relationships with your faculty members. I know that's really challenging in a Zoom setting, but try to go to office hours and make those connections because you're gonna need some really solid recommendation letters when it comes time to applying to a graduate or professional program. Beyond that, We do require a professional interview in addition to the application materials. So any opportunity that you can to take advantage of mock interviews are going to be helpful along the way. And then for our program, we don't require a minimum number of hours. So for volunteer or shadowing or pharmacy experience hours, but those types of experiences are encouraged. Really, I just tell students to look for leadership opportunities, but leadership looks a lot of different ways. That could be in student organizations, that could be in research, that could be in work or volunteers. So if you have questions about that, as always, please feel free to reach out and let me know.
Okay, I guess I'm next. Medical school does require that you have a bachelor's degree to get in, and you can apply usually in your senior year. So right in the summer before your senior year of undergrad. We will accept any major of any sort, but we do have prerequisite courses that you need to take. And those are going to be in biology and chemistry and organic chemistry, biochemistry, physics, statistics or pre-calculus or above course, and some writing courses and literature, humanities, things like that. So all of those are listed on our webpage. And we do require that you have at least a 3.0 in your biology, chemistry, physics, and math courses, and in your overall GPA. And you must have at least a 500 on the MCAT, the Medical College Admissions Test. So you want to make sure that you are ready to take those, ready to take the test, that you spend plenty of time preparing for your classes and test taking and those sorts of things, because it's important to have a solid academic record in order to be able to really get through medical school. It's not an easy path by any means. You do need 3 letters of recommendation for your application. So again, start early in talking with faculty, making connections with people, and it can be clear across a wide variety of academic people and also people that you might have worked for or with. So keep those in mind as you're going along. We do have an interview process that this year is all virtual. We started yesterday. So we do hope to go back to in-person as soon as we can get rid of COVID. So it's a more fun experience, I think, but we are offering tours right now on Thursdays at noon. So if you want to do one of those, you need to contact Deb Henricks and she'll get you all set up. The committee does want you to have some form of experience in healthcare. It can be paid, like a nursing assistant or a scribe. It could be volunteering in the ER or anywhere that you might, EMT, things like that, and shadowing of some sort. But shadowing right now is a really difficult thing to do in person. And so I think there are some virtual shadowing things happening out there. Make sure that they meet HIPAA laws ahead of time before you start in on something like that. Let me think, leadership, teamwork, all kinds of other activities, but make sure that those activities don't overwhelm your classes because still your coursework is going to be important in what you're in your application. I think that's all. We'll start with that.
That was great, Kathy. That's a hard act to follow. So in the College of Dentistry, we do not require a degree for admission. We do require 90 semester hours. So you'd have to be at junior status. So that's the first thing. We have prerequisite classes that are required. They can be in progress while you're going through the application process. That's totally okay. They're all on our website. My hunch is that the prerequisites for the College of Dentistry are probably very similar to what you've heard for medicine, for pharmacy, and what you're going to hear about from PA. I think there's really common overlaps and themes there. But so you need to take the prerequisites. You're also going to take a test called the DAT, the Dental Admissions Test. And my personal recommendation, if you're thinking about dentistry, is get those prereqs most of the way wrapped up, and then take that DAT probably sometime your junior year. I like winter break. The DAT has a couple of rules. You have to wait 90 days between test taking periods. If you take it once, like over winter break, and you're not happy with your results, you've got a buffer to study and re-strategize over your spring semester before our application opens. Our application opens every June, and there are significant advantages for candidates that apply right away when it opens. And I can talk more about that if folks have specific questions about how the process works. But so the goal, I will tell anybody, is you want to apply right when it opens, right at the crack of it, with your DAT score in hand. We require a minimum of 3 letters of evaluation. You can have a maximum of 4. And so just like you've heard from my other colleagues, you want to work to establish rapport, with faculty as best you can. And, a wise person once said, whoever you're looking at, your faculty, the top of the food chain at a job, they're people too, and they care when you notice the picture of their family in the background, or their dog that's running across the Zoom screen. And when you follow up and ask questions, it develops rapport. When you show an investment beyond just the course material, you as a student are becoming memorable. So be thoughtful, intentional. Don't underestimate the power of a handwritten thank you note for extra time during office hours, or for their mentorship, or whatever it might be that they have had an impact on your life. So so that's my advice for letters of evaluation. But I think we also, on the application for dental school, it's called AADSAS, which I know is a really yucky long acronym. It's AADSAS, the Associate American Dental School Application Service. But the average application is 30 to 60 pages in length. So it is a bit of a beast, in my opinion. But it's, we don't require a specific number of shadowing hours or a specific number of volunteer hours for dentistry. But pro tip, that doesn't mean don't do it. You should have shadowing and volunteerism and extracurricular activities. There's not a right or wrong answer to us for what that looks like. It's okay if it's not in health sciences. Great if it is. It's okay if it's not. But you want to be strategically thinking about how you can demonstrate who you are, what you value, who you are, what you're passionate about, and particularly connecting those dots to why those things about you are going to make you a great dental student and eventually a great dentist. So I can go into more detail about that as well, but I think that checks off all of our requirement lists. I'll turn it over to Geraldine.
Perfect. So PA school, similar to some of the other programs that you just heard about, we also have a centralized application system. For us, it's called CASPA. So if you're applying to Iowa, if you're applying to any other school in the US, you'd submit an application via that. But each school may have differing requirements. So one point that we really like to emphasize is always check our website for the most up-to-date application information. There are some standards. We have like GPA, GRE, contact hours, letters of rec, which I'll go a little more into. But for example, with COVID, we may not have the same number of required healthcare contact hours in the 2021 CASPA cycle as what we've had in 2020. So we really encourage you, always go to the website and see what the most up-to-date posted requirements are. For GPA, we do require a 3.0 minimum overall, and we do have some specific science GPA as well. GRE, we do have requirement 25th percentile on each of the subsections, and we have prereqs like bio, chem, statistical sciences, and again, just checking the website. Healthcare contact hours, which I briefly touched on before, for us right now, it's a minimum of 500 by December 31st of your application year. And again, that could change depending on kind of what the program decides, and especially with COVID. And for letters of recommendation, we do require 3. One must be from an academic professor, so that could be like a faculty person or someone teaching your class. One must be from a healthcare supervisor, and one key point is it can't be a coworker. So it's great, obviously, if you know your coworkers and if you're friends, but for us, that is not going to be an acceptable letter of rec. And the final one can be from anyone. So if you have someone that knows you really well, and if they're a professor, or if they're a semi-supervisor colleague in a job, that could be your third letter that will fit. And I have additional details that we can probably save those for the breakout, and we can go on to the next question.
Awesome. Thank you guys all for going over those requirements. I can personally say that obviously there's a lot of things that they mentioned and then a lot of requirements and things you need to do. But as a senior, time flies really fast. So definitely to you guys who are freshmen, try to start looking into those faculty members, try to, do your best to start improving your application as soon as possible. So the next question I have is, what do you guys look for in a resume, and what is something that makes a resume stick out?
That's a really great question. So for pharmacy, just as we're open to a variety of majors, we're also open to a variety of different career experiences that students have had, because realistically, while it's nice to have students have some type of healthcare experience on their resume, we know that your experience working as a server or working in retail or even as a lifeguard is giving you some really solid transferable skill sets that are going to make you a really strong healthcare provider. What is going to stand out on your resume is how you talk about those transferable skills. So, thinking about your communication skills, your ability to adapt and think on your feet, dealing with difficult customers or patients, and how you were able to handle yourself in those situations, your leadership, your dependability, those types of skills and experiences are going to be really valuable and show strongly on a resume. But even what's more important than that is also thinking about those experiences on your resume and being able to talk about those. So being able to share about those experiences in your interview. So one of the best pieces of advice that I can give to a student is document your experiences as you go. Try not to wait to then look back and think on all the things that you did and put them on a resume. Update your resume as you're going along. So with different student org involvements, with different honors or certificates that you've earned, or any type of work experiences, things that even in the classroom with class projects, times that you were able to demonstrate leadership or work on a team, those are going to be the things that any graduate or professional program is going to ask about. And so if you're documenting those along the way, it's going to be easier for you to recall when it comes time for you to actually apply to these programs.
I think you're going to find that all of us have similar kinds of thoughts on this. You don't technically need a resume to fill out the AMCAS, the application service form, but it does ask you for your experiences. And it allows you to have 3 experiences that are most meaningful. And in those experiences, then you get to write extra. Kind of an overview of what you learned and what was so special about that particular experience. And typically you can put anything in there. It could be sports, it could be music, it could be a healthcare experience. But if you have 3, it's better to have a healthcare experience in those top 3 than to not include one in there. We don't have any specific hours that you have to spend in volunteering or shadowing or anything like that. What the committee really wants to know is, what did you learn? And how have you grown from those experiences? So I usually tell applicants that if you are shadowing somebody, if you just got done with the shift at the ER, go home and write down something that happened that day, something in your experience that you would be able to go back and look at and say, oh, I forgot about that. And it can actually add so much to your story, to your personal statement that you have to write. It won't just be, I did this, I did this, I did this. It's actually going to be turning it into a story of you, and how you fit into this career. So writing it down is really the best way to do it. And as you're going through, the AMCAS allows you to write down publications and honors and presentations that you've done. It gives you health-related experiences, non-healthcare related experiences, paid experiences, and still those, if you're working to help pay your way through college, you're still gonna have skills that you got from that experience that you can use that tie into medicine. Certainly there's something you did that required a team, or some way that you jumped in and led a group in something to get through a difficult period, or worked with a difficult customer or something like that. So don't downplay those. And I think a lot of people make the mistake that they think that everything they write on their AMCAS experience has to be healthcare related. Don't leave out the things that aren't. Those are as important as the others. And again, it doesn't have to do with the hours that you do. It has to do with what you learned from those experiences and how you can get that across in your personal statement, in your experiences on your AMCAS, and in your interview as well, because they are going to ask questions about leadership and teamwork and a challenging situation. We've also found that particularly now, one of our interview questions has to do with ethical questions or kind of what's going on in the world around us. So if you could take some time to just go online and research what kinds of things might come up in an ethical situation. COVID certainly has access to healthcare and a number of other issues that we've learned through the pandemic that impact how somebody gets care. If you can look up transfusions or organ donation or those kinds of things, just to see where the issues are and how you might think through what you would do in a situation where you were pulled into an ethical question. So just go online and look at what kinds of things are going on in the world around you and how that might impact the career that you're interested in going into. And just think about kind of those things as well. Write down some more ideas that you might have, but at least it'll help you when you get ready to come in for an interview to remember and be able to come up with an answer that isn't just a list of things, it's an actual story that includes who you are and the kinds of things that you've done. I think that's it.
So ditto for dentistry. You don't submit a resume. It's an application that has just different category areas. I think that candidates that are the most memorable, which I would say is half the battle in the application process, are candidates, similar to what Kathy was saying, candidates that identify things outside of health sciences, things that they're passionate about, that they value, who or what they value. I think that, you know, we have, for dentistry, we have 700 to 1,000 applicants on any given year. And the vast majority of those are going to be involved in the predental club or the pre-med club or the biology club. I mean, they're going to have a lot of the same experiences. It's the candidates that aren't afraid to say, I love to water ski and I'm in the water ski club. Or for example, a great story, like Kathy was saying, tell a story. A few years ago, we had a candidate that had her own cake decorating business, and she wrote her entire essay about how she markets her business, about how frosting cakes has developed her manual dexterity skills, about how she manages her finances. And so she went step by step, told this wonderful story about her entrepreneurship and her love of baking and bringing joy to people in a culinary way. And then she said, and this is why I'm going to be a great dentist. Job security, right? I'm selling sugar, but also, you know, how it ties into being, you know, most dentists own their own practice in the state of Iowa. And so she connected those dots beautifully. And I still talk about her because no one else has been able, at least in my mind, she's been one of the most memorable essays I've ever read because she took something she was passionate about and she connected it to dentistry. You know, so you don't have to make that connection all the time. You know, if you water ski, I don't know how that plays into dentistry, but you will, as a dentist and as a doctor, and you know, in all these programs, you're going to have relationships, and you have to be able to make small talk. That means things that you're passionate about, as well as engaging in what your patients are passionate about too. And so it's great to be involved in MAPS and in all the other clubs and organizations that you're in that relate to health sciences, but please, please, please put your other things on there, because that's what's going to make you memorable and what's going to make you stand out.
I love that cake story. That's amazing. So pretty similar, fantastic advice all around. One thing, even if a resume isn't required, I think it's good practice to always have one at the ready and have it be updated and ready to go if you need it, especially if you're in any application cycle or even down the road for jobs. That's one of the most important things, is to always have your resume up to date and ready to go. And I think one thing that's tough, you want it to be organized yet stand out, kind of echoing other pieces that people have said. There's so many applicants and applications and resumes and just pieces of material that might come across graders' desks or kind of the interviewer's desk, that you want it obviously to look nice and be well organized and, you know, proofread, no typos, all that jazz, but also figure out some way to stand out. Because then if I'm reading 50 applicants in a day and going through all their materials, I'm going to see yours, and it'll be kind of like a refreshing glass of water when I see that one. And one other point that extends beyond resumes and just any application material you turn in, I think seems elementary to say, but it's so critical, is whatever you put down, you want it to be true and authentic. One kind of crazy example that seems so silly, so one of our faculty members absolutely loves Star Wars. Like, they are crazy for Star Wars. And an applicant had somewhere that, you know, kind of that fun piece, like the cakes and the water skiing, that they love Star Wars. So on interview weekend, you know, she was kind of chatting them up about Star Wars. And turns out that wasn't really a true thing that they put down. So just really be authentic to yourself and make sure whatever you have in your application or on your resume or any of those materials is truthful and not twisted or kind of manipulated in any way to try to come across as more exciting or appeal to a different group.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that. Next question I have is, what is a mistake you see people make with their resume or their application?
Oh, that's really difficult. I have to think about that one. The biggest thing that I would say for students that I see as a mistake are students that throw their application together in a very quick amount of time without trying to be thoughtful in what they're writing on their personal statement, taking the time to have it proofread by others, taking the time to actually document the experiences. You know, we've talked about this a lot, of the types of things that you want to include on your application. We don't see that from students when they procrastinate and wait to put their application materials together. So I would say the best thing that you can do is give yourself a lot of time to go through the application and find out what's going to be expected of you. Because a lot of these times, you know, you're applying for the programs a year before you plan to start, and you think that's a lot of time, but you still have a lot of things to be working on and completing ahead of that. You know, like I said, a lot of this preparation for your application actually starts early on, as far as building the relationships with faculty and being able to have someone look over your personal statement and having all of those things compiled together in an organized and professional way. If you wait to do any of those steps, we can tell on the application. If I can tell if you asked someone to be your letter of recommendation and they don't know you that well, maybe they only know you for a month and they don't have stories or experiences to talk about on your behalf. You know, that really comes through. And so I would say that's probably the biggest mistake. So think about now what's going to be expected of you on that application and start preparing as far in advance as you can.
For us, I know that throwing it together quickly, and especially if it's late, doesn't do you much good at all. Grammar and spelling, capitalize the things that are supposed to be capitalized. Sometimes people have a style that they don't capitalize anything, and it doesn't usually go over well. There is a personal statement that you need to write. And when people aren't admitted, the comments that we see from the reviewers on the admissions committee is that their personal statement wasn't about why medicine, and it wasn't actually personal. So what they mean by that is, if you just go through and list the experiences that you've had, I did this, I did that, and then I did this, and I did that, and then I'm going to be a really great doctor. It doesn't say anything about what you've learned from those experiences. It doesn't give them the story of who you are. So they want it to be why medicine and make it personal. They can read those experiences on the application, so they don't really need you to list those. They want them to be integrated into a story that gives them a picture of who you are. So those are some of the big things. I think some of the others that I've seen are not listing things that you've done because you thought they weren't healthcare related. So we've had people who've entered 3 activities and you have a space for 15. And when we talk to them, we find out that they were working 20 hours a week and they could have had a recommendation from somebody that they work for. And also those recommendations are going to be a big deal. So again, somebody needs to know you well enough, because if their letter says they got this grade in my class, the committee can see that. What they want to know is, if your experiment went awry, were you able to rebound? Were you able to be resilient and flexible? Did you think on your feet? Those kinds of things are going to be important to them. And the same is true in a job. If you're having trouble at a job, maybe you have a customer that's just not feeling it for you, then you can go ahead and think about the ways that you could handle that. And then your recommender can look at you and say, you did a fabulous job in dealing with that person by connecting with them in some common theme of sorts. And so I think that making sure that the recommenders know you is also a really important part of your application.
In dentistry, I would say common mistakes I see on our application, AdSAS, there's not a spell check. And so, yeah, just like other people have said, that's a big deal. So my advice is to, early on, like Lauren had mentioned, give yourself so much time in advance. Start a Word document or an Excel document where you're literally typing up everything so that you can spell check, grammar check. I also think that a common, people don't know this, but when on the dentistry application, you get 4,500 characters to write your personal statement, and there's no like cue or wind up to it. And so some people just write a whole page, single spaced block, like one giant paragraph. And I mentioned that the average application is 30 to 60 pages in length. So the odds of my admissions committee reading every word that you write in your application probably is slim. They're probably going to skim your information. And so that means when it comes to your personal statement, I recommend smaller paragraphs with a space in between. I don't want you to dumb anything down, but I would advise use simple sentence structure so that someone that's skimming can quickly and easily grasp the main point of what you're trying to get in your essay. And hopefully they are captivated by it and they take their time to just dine there in your essay and just, bathe in it and love it and get really excited about you. But when you have a whole paragraph with no spaces, it's a turnoff. It's hard to digest. It's hard on the eye. So, and I think you know, the rest for dentistry anyways, the rest of the sections are pretty brief. So it just naturally kind of lends itself to easy short sentences. But so that's some advice to throw out there. And then I want to echo what Kathy said, don't apply late. When I say apply early, it means right away when the application opens, because there are we have a rolling process. So statistically, the later you apply, the lesser your odds are. And if you're going to invest the money and the time, you want your odds to be primo, right? You want to be the cream of the crop. So apply with your scores, your letters, your application, all in a bow, ready to go.
So I think for us, one of kind of the most common and biggest mistakes on the application is if you don't meet our requirements. And that seems like such a simple thing to say, but we have so many candidates where, especially with the prereq requirements and like the specific academic courses that are required, if we require something by fall and then they're enrolled in it for spring, they think that that counts because they're actively enrolled in the future course, but it isn't that way. Requirements are requirements for a reason. You know, they've been very deliberate that these courses are needed to guarantee success once you're admitted. So really be certain that you're checking, you have all your prereqs done. And even with the healthcare hours, like it's always really tragic if you see a fantastic candidate apply and then they don't meet one of the requirements, because really in essence you've kind of wasted a whole cycle just with that kind of oversight error. So definitely it's helpful to start early, because then, and even where you guys are at right now, like this is fantastic that you're already thinking about this and you're kind of dedicating time towards it, because then you can make sure if I need this certain chem course that it's done and you get the suitable GPA that you need and you kind of have everything locked in and ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. And then I just have two more quick questions. The next question, and I think Rachel, you kind of hit on this a little bit, but what is something, or what's like the most unique thing you've seen in an application?
Oh, so the most unique thing that I've seen in an application, it's not necessarily one specific thing. Like I wish I could recall a story like Rachel's cake story, but it's what the student does to make themselves unique. And so we see a lot in the personal statement, the very standard reasons and motivations for wanting to become a healthcare professional or wanting to get into pharmacy. And so a lot of those will have common themes and commonalities that we see. But it's the students that have really been vulnerable and honest and transparent in their application to say that why this is so important to them and why they think they are destined to be successful pharmacy students and then eventually pharmacists. Those are the types of things that stand out to us, because you can absolutely tell when there's someone that's so motivated and so passionate, it just comes through in their writing. And usually it's the students that have taken the time to truly reflect on their experiences and think about what was that defining moment that made me want to pursue this healthcare profession. And that's not always easy to do. So it goes back to that prep as far as thinking, you know, what was that? And if you can't think about that, if you don't know offhand, like what specifically was the thing that made me want to become a doctor or nurse or a pharmacist, I'll challenge you to think about that, you know, journal, do some self-reflection and think about what are my internal motivations? Because when you are able to identify that and then speak on that in your personal statement and in your interviews, that's what stands out.
My favorite one was a applicant who was a balloon artist. And when he came to interview, he said, basically, you know, it seemed like a great way to make money in a short period of time. And you'd be surprised how much money you can make being a balloon artist. He said, but you know, you have to be able to be quick at it. You have to be able to make what the kids want. You have to keep a smile on your face and be able to handle whatever comes your way. and he had a handlebar mustache and a beard. He looked just like a balloon artist, basically. But he was one of the nicest, most easy to talk to applicants. And when he came on his interview day, his dad told me at orientation that he came home from his interview and said, if they accept me, that is where I'm going, because he had such a great experience at Iowa that he wasn't expecting. So maybe give schools a try that you're not thinking, and maybe something you know how to do is actually going to help you stand out. Even if you think it isn't, it turns out it probably will. And interestingly enough, his brother also applied that same year, and he was a concert pianist. So they also ran their dad and uncle's gas stations when their uncle got sick, and they went through a post-bac program, and they helped pay for it by being a pianist and a balloon artist. So, you know, tying it into how that makes you who you are, he was just a fabulous person to get to know, and one of my favorite medical students of all time. So crazy story, it's not sugar. But I'm sure that as a doctor, as a pediatrician, he's going to use those balloon skills. So something fun.
I want to meet that doctor. That's awesome. That's a great story. So since I already shared a unique, like positive one, let me share a unique, like not good one. From time to time, we see what I would call inappropriate email addresses. And that is always a little bit of a shocker, particularly if it's a great application. And you can argue like great application, inappropriate email, you know, like you can argue that, but it's a turnoff for our admissions committee to see something related to your physique in your email address, or, I mean, I won't elaborate. You can, so I advise that you utilize an email address with your name or some kind of very plain Jane, you know, make it very vanilla, very politically correct. So that's one thing. And also make sure that this, I know this is a given for this group, but every once in a while, there will be something. So for instance, a couple years ago, we had a candidate that used a cuss word in their interview, and it was not well received. It's actually happened a couple of times since I've been in dentistry. And so make sure that your application, you know, yes, grammatically, everything is proper, but also you need to just be conscious of who your audience is, that maybe what works with your friends and your buddies may not be appropriate in a professional setting. So do practice interviews and be really conscious to filter what you're saying during your interview experience.
So one memorable applicant for us, we actually had an applicant who experienced being homeless between her freshman and sophomore year. And obviously that's a very personal moment and very vulnerable situation, but she shared it just because that really showed, and what she really talked about in her application was her grit and her resilience, that she was able to make it through that and still work towards becoming a PA and work towards this fantastic application. And it's also an example, never feel pressured to share anything that you're not comfortable sharing, you know, even if it's a huge kind of part of something you went through. But was that healthcare related? Was that direct from healthcare hours? Was that something PA specific? No, but that was something that told the admissions committee so much about her and what she had been through and how she was able to kind of write and share her story. So that was a really, really memorable applicant who shared a lot of her journey.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing those unique experiences. And also, I apologize for not reversing the order. Time kind of flew by much faster than expected, but I do have one last question. What are some tips for either obtaining a good letter of recommendation or something that you guys kind of look for in a good letter of recommendation?
Yeah, what I usually tell students as far as letters of recommendation, try to choose your evaluators in a way that's going to give us the most well-rounded picture of you. So for pharmacy, those students are considered professional students. So in that mindset, who would be able to speak about you in the professional setting and who can speak about you as in the student setting? And I recognize that not everybody had a supervisor, so they might not have a professional reference, or not everybody had a faculty member that they connected with. And that's okay. If you're gonna ask 2 supervisors or 2 faculty, for example, you want to make sure that those folks that you're asking are speaking on 2 different elements of your strengths and characteristics. So 2 supervisors, maybe one speaks about your leadership and your other speaks about your professionalism or how you interact and communicate with your patients or customers or whichever setting that you're in. You can ask your evaluators to speak on specific topics based off of who you already have in your back pocket lined up to write for you. But just make sure that you're trying to get the most well-rounded perspective of you that you can absolutely get. Because we also have students, while we require a minimum of 2, students can submit up to 4 recommendations, but those last 2 aren't going to be beneficial or help your application if they said the same things that the first 2 did. So use those additional recommendations if they can speak on another strength or characteristic of you, and just think about who in your circle is going to be able to help provide that well-rounded picture of you as a candidate.
So 2 of our letters need to be from faculty. They can be an advisor in your department. The committee does notice if you don't have a letter of recommendation from your major department. So if it's a science-based major, that's great. If it's not, if you decide to major in anthropology or psychology or literature or whatever you might choose, make sure that you get somebody from your department. We've had lots of students choose a coach or their band director, any group that they might be in on the side as well. Those all are wonderful letters, and we want them to address things that they know about the applicant. And again, not about what grade they got, because that doesn't really matter. What they really want to know is how that person saw you in that particular setting. So something that stands out about you. Please do not go get the governor or somebody who doesn't know you well. Sometimes those things can backfire. If you choose, your mom will write a terrible letter, so don't choose her. I've seen some really good ones through the years, but they seem to be really honest. But choose somebody that's in a professional position. If you've been working off campus, your supervisor should write one, because they're going to see you in a different light than what the people in your academic setting are going to see. So we want a broad range of people who see you in different ways and are able to speak to those kinds of personal characteristics that we're looking for. Your moral character, your integrity, your ability to get along with others, again, your flexibility and resilience if something didn't go right. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking for in a letter, and make sure that you ask somebody who knows you. Now, just on an aside, Des Moines Osteopathic does require you to have a letter from someone you shadowed. We do not have that requirement. So don't worry about that. If it's a short letter because you shadowed somebody for 2 hours, we certainly don't expect that person to write a recommendation, but Des Moines does. So just make sure that you check each school and figure out what each of the schools that you're interested in might require.
Okay, so this is Rachel's opinion. This is not written anywhere on the College of Dentistry website. My opinion is that human nature, whoever's reading your application is probably going to walk away and absorb 2, maybe 3 things about you. So I know Neha's here tonight. She's pre-dent. I chatted with her earlier today in a conversation. Thanks for coming twice to chat and to absorb. But you know, Neha, she's passionate about community. She wants to be a woman of influence. So if I was advising her about her application, it's almost like you have to take a step back and do a 360 and look at your application and say, okay, how am I going to communicate my love for community in my application? How am I going to communicate that I am passionate about being a woman of change and of influence within my community? Do my involvements and experiences on campus show that? Yes, let me make sure there's a theme. And then that in my opinion, it carries over to your letters of evaluation. I tell the pre-dental club all the time, I say, think about who you want to write your letter of evaluation, and then go individually to each of them, make that ask and put it in writing. Say, here's a copy of my personal statement and my resume, whatever. And here are the characteristics or the experiences I want you personally to address for me. This is what I'm trying to flex. So if it's to display your love of community, maybe Neha's going to ask one of those authors to talk about, I don't know, her church involvement or her involvement in the residence hall government or her, you know, whatever it is, her campus leadership. And then maybe she's going to ask somebody else to hone in on how she wants to be a woman of influence and how she's involved in Black Lives Matter, or, you know, like whatever community or organization it might be that is particularly significant to her. And then the third person, I would advise her, pick another quality or characteristic that you want to flex and give them a bullet. Here's what I want. Would you please address these characteristics? Because not everybody, not every, you know, God bless faculty, we need them, but not every faculty member knows what we're looking for and knows how to write a compelling letter on your behalf. And so, like Kathy was saying, you know, we want to hear a story. I want to hear about your character. Tell me what makes you, I don't care about the grades. We already see those. When you make that ask, tell, you know, make that request. I don't need numbers in a letter of evaluation or rankings or grades. I need examples of, I need you to write and advocate for me on these characteristics that I'm trying to showcase in my application. So I think if you provide some guidance, the people that are writing a letter will be really appreciative, because otherwise it's just kind of vague and willy-nilly and they'll write whatever, which is okay. But if you're trying to be really specific and strategic, I think you should provide guidelines to get the best outcome in your letters of evaluation.
One other piece of advice I'll echo. So we do require different kind of sources for the letter. One can vary. One has to be from a healthcare supervisor, which kind of stems from our required healthcare contact hours. And then one is from a professor. So you might assume that naturally different arenas might highlight different things, because a professor might see different parts of you and the character you exhibit compared to a supervisor, and compared to if you have someone, let's say you volunteer at the Salvation Army and they're your third letter of rec. But it is very important to make sure that they highlight you, because that's really the part of your application that can shine, is how others highlighting these pieces of you that you want to bring to the forefront. So then when people are, like's been said, when they're thinking of your app, what are the things that come to mind? And one other piece, I'll be brief, is make sure you give enough time for them to actually complete your letter. It's not professional, and it's also not fair if you give them a deadline of even a week, because you really can't anticipate what they're doing there in their week. And it's likely that product, similar to all of us, it's like if you start a paper 2 weeks before versus if you start it 2 days before, kind of what result is going to be yielded from that effort. So make sure you give them enough time to really sit down, think about it, pen it, and then possibly, kind of revisit it again before they give it back to you to submit.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And again, a big thank you to the panelists for being able to make it to our event. Thank you, Kathy, Rachel, Geraldine, and Lauren. It's always so nice that whenever we reach out, you guys are always so, nice, and always are very encouraging, always are so enthusiastic to come to our event. So that really means a lot. So thank you guys. I know there's not too much time left, but we're still going to try to do our breakout sessions. We might end up stealing another couple of minutes of your guys' time. I hope that's okay. I'm going to put the links to that in the chat right now. So we have a link for dentistry, PA, and pharmacy. So if you guys want to stick around for just a couple more minutes and ask the panelists, any specific questions about their grad schools, definitely head to those links. But thank you guys all again very much for attending. For medicine, we'll be staying in this Zoom session.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you for coming. All right, so for those of you guys who have specific questions, and also for you guys, for the panelists, these links are for you guys as well. So for the dentistry, for the PA, and for the pharmacy panelists as well, I put it in the chat so you guys can click on that, ask and answer any specific questions for anyone who specifically wants to ask something about pharmacy or PA or dentistry or medicine, of course. Rachel, if you want, I can specifically send you the link as well. Yes. All right, I think, let me send one more link, and then if anyone, does anyone have, you guys are welcome to ask questions about to Kathy in the chat, or you can, turn your mic on and ask a question. I can start if no one else has anything to say right now, but Kathy, just a quick question about research. How important is like research to like a medical application?
We don't require research. It isn't a requirement for us at all, but the committee likes to see it. There's lots of ways to be involved in research. There's bench research, there's clinical trials, there are translational research opportunities, there's research in psychology and public health and lots of different departments. I think what helps the most about research is that medicine and science are moving forward so quickly, and we all have to learn how to sort through that information. And you want to make sure that as you're sorting that you're catching the good stuff and not paying attention to the stuff that isn't good research. So what doing research helps you do is learn what those methods are that are the best methods to use, what the statistics mean, and what you're looking for. So when you become a practitioner and all that information is coming at you, like I think right now, medicine and science knowledge is doubling every 70 days or so. It's not going to get more than that, it's going to get less. Yeah. So being able to sort that and look at it and say, this is good research, but it doesn't impact how I'm practicing medicine right now, so I'm going to set it aside. This is really bad research and I'm not going to pay attention to it. And then this is something that's going to change how I practice medicine. And so being able to sort it is what research gives you that opportunity to learn. So in those cases, even being able to help with a literature review for a research project or somebody, over here in medicine who's doing research, doing something like that is actually helpful. And they usually will accept volunteers at any time. So if they're not paying, they at least do tend to take on a volunteer. So kind of pick something that you're interested in. I think public health has really cool stuff going on. And if I could do research, I would actually be doing it over